Hello and welcome everybody to my presentation. Today I'm talking about the Chicago Women's School of Sociology. Since there are a lot of women you could talk about in this topic, I'm focusing only on three of them, Florence, Kelley, and the sisters Edith and Grace Abbott. I'm starting to talk a little bit about the Chicago Women's School of Sociology in general. Then I will talk about the biographies of Florence, Kelley, and Edith and Grace Abbott. And at the end, I want to give you a little understanding of one of the many associations the women of the Chicago Women's School of Sociology founded, the National Consumers League, or short NCL. The Chicago Women's School of Sociology was like a network of women who worked together. The main topics they were concerned about were social theory, sociological research, and social reform. They shared ideas of how women can support women and how they can move into public life with their visions, opinions, and views about a lot of social and sociological topics. They worked mainly out of two bases. First, the Hull House, which was founded by Jane Addams, and second, the University of Chicago, mainly between 1889 and 1920. They were influenced by Jane Addams and her theory of civil society. Now let's talk a little bit about the biographies. Florence Kelley was born on September 12, 1859 in Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. Her father William was a Republican congressman, an abolitionist, and an advocate of women's suffrage. Her mother Caroline was an efficient household manager who bore 8 children. She had a really good connection to her mother. Kelley attended Cornell University, which was one of the first private universities who admitted women to a full status. There she did her senior thesis on child labor, a topic which would be important to her for her whole life. Later she moved to Europe and studied in Zurich in Switzerland. There she got in touch with the socialist ideas of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels and translated, for example, one of Engels' books, The Condition of the Working Class in England, from German into English. In Zurich she married a Russian doctor with whom she had 3 children. 1886 she moved back to America, where she and her husband tried to be active in the Socialist Labor Party in New York. It didn't really work out there and her marriage failed, so she moved to Chicago. There she moved with her children in the Hull House in 1891, and she joined the group of friends of Jane Addams, and that's how she came into the Chicago Women's School of Sociology. Overall, Florence Kelley fought to end child labor, for better working conditions for the workers, and equality for women and African Americans. Florence Kelley died in Philadelphia in 1932. Edith and Grace Abbott. These sisters were both born in Nebraska. Edith on September 26, 1876, and Grace on November 11, 1878. Their father Othman Abbott was a lawyer who became lieutenant of the state, and their mother Elizabeth was a worker for women's suffrage. Because of a great drought in Nebraska, the family got into debt. So both sisters began teaching high school while they were in college and university in Nebraska. Later they attended the University of Chicago, where they eventually got into contact with the women of the Chicago Women's School of Sociology, and with that, of course, the Hull House. Edith Abbott became Dean of the School of Social Services at the University of Chicago. She also advocated field work and training for social workers and also was an advisor for federal aid and relief during the Great Depression in the 1930s. She also was an advisor to the International Office of the League of Nations and cared about the problems of women in industry, child labor, immigration, legislation, pensions, wages, and police brutality. Grace, on the other hand, began her career in social work in 1908, working with immigrants at the Hull House in Chicago. For 9 years she directed the Immigrants Protective League, which was founded of some of the women from the Chicago School. Concerned about the welfare of children and infants, she also became a leader in the fight for federal legislation protecting children's rights. Through the efforts of Grace Abbott, the Shepard-Towner Act was passed. It is an act which coordinates federal and state aid for mothers and children. Grace died 1939 in Chicago and Edith much later in 1957 in Grand Island. As I already mentioned it, the women of the Chicago Women's School of Sociology founded a lot of associations. So I chose one who fits good in the topic of the economy, the National Consumers League. To live means to buy means to have power means to have responsibility. This quote of Florence Kelley depicts the main principles of the NCL, that the working conditions we accept for our fellow citizens should be reflected by our purchases. It is important to know what we buy, and I think that is still relevant today. The National Consumers League still exists and was founded in 1899 by Jane Addams and Josephine Lowell, and Florence Kelley was the first general secretary. So Florence Kelley was mainly involved and influential in the first actions of the NCL. In the early 1900s, Florence Kelley and the NCL put effort into things like protecting in-home workers from terrible exploitation by their employers. They wrote and then defended state minimum wage laws for women, so she helped creating some minimum wage laws so that the workers get paid better. Florence Kelley also worked to help, for example, creating the 10-hour workdays. She and the NCL also advocated the so-called white label that should identify certain stores and enterprises that treat employees fairly. So people were asked to support workers' rights by only shopping in stores with this white label. They also advocated the creation of federal child labor restrictions.